Good evening, happy Wednesday, and many thanks for being a part of tonight's broadcast with me, Gloria Mutesi. Starting us off tonight, health officials in Rwanda have again warned of dire measures because of a rise in COVID-19 infections after a jump of 275% was registered in the last 2 weeks. Rubavu in the western province has now been isolated from the rest of the country, with residents required to remain in their own district. Sessionary with the details.
The last few weeks have seen a sudden change in the rate of infections, raising concerns as to where things are headed if nothing is done.
The
infection rate in Rubavu district in general is at 15.6%, but some sectors in urban areas have registered rates higher than 35% for all tests taken, and that is very high. Following consultations with the Ministry of Health, we decided that Rubavu's residents should remain in their district while preventive measures are tightened, and any movement between it and other districts is closely monitored. Kigali is also being warned because some sectors like Nyakabanda and Ngendo have been found to have high infection rates. We are urging local residents to realize that enforcing these preventive measures should not be a task meant just for the authorities. They too should play their role. Health officials in the country are also urging the general public to realize the seriousness of the situation, with Rubavu district leading the pack when it comes to infection rates in the last 2 weeks, followed by Rutsiro. Last week's infection average was at 300. Now it has climbed to 1,200. COVID infection rates have gone up by 275% in the last 2 weeks, and fatalities have increased by 25%. Hospitalization because of COVID has increased by 175%. Even with the most conservative projections, we still have a worse situation next week, which is why something must be done. In addition to this, 400 people who have already been vaccinated with 1 or 2 jabs were also found to have contracted the virus, and even though none showed any symptoms, there is little doubt as to the fact that they most likely passed it on to numerous others nevertheless. The Kanyinya and Gatenga COVID treatment centers that were closed 4 months ago have now been reopened after Nyarugenje Hospital hit 65% of capacity because of fresh infections. Health officials are still confident, however, that the pandemic can still be brought under control if people once again begin strictly practicing the preventive measures in place. Figures indicate that the infection rate is on the rise and that we must all play our part as individuals and institutions to bring it down again. We have the measures to pull it down, and we have been using them successfully for almost 2 years now. It only requires that we all work together to make them effective. Even though COVID-19 variants are yet to be found in Rwanda, health officials are warning that the Delta variant of the virus that spreads and kills at a rate 4 times what the ordinary one is able to do has been found in neighboring countries.
Now, the Ministry of Local Government has announced that some new measures to combat the spread of COVID-19 in some of the districts across the country. Minister Jean-Marie Vianney Gatabazi takes us through some of the measures as some of these districts note a rise in COVID-19 infections.
Enforcing these preventive measures should not be the sole responsibility of the government or security organs. It has to be the responsibility of everyone, including the heads of institutions and citizens. If someone owns a hotel, he or she should set up a task force that follows up on how their preventive measures against COVID are being handled because they are safe, and then it is a good business for them. If they all fall sick, then of course there are repercussions for that. And this applies to market traders as well. They should set up committees to follow up to ensure that they have water and that everyone is following up on the guidelines because it is for their own good. We have instructed that all places set up committees of at least 5 people who will follow up on the COVID-19 guidelines. And these are all institutions, trading centers, private sector. They should seek to own this initiative. For those who will not follow them, then they will be considered negligent and we will follow up on them. However, we are calling on all citizens to respect the guidelines, but also want to thank them for obeying these measures. All they need is explanations as to why the measures have been put in place. When we start to get good results and the curfew hours will be reduced and even things like total lockdowns will be a thing of the past, and everybody will enjoy that.
Abantu bakomeza kwitwara neza amasaha azagenda azamurwa abantu bazagera igihe cyo kuba bakora amasaha yose 24 Imana iba yaraduhaye.
Now, the Airport Inn motel operating in Kicukiro district has been closed for 3 months for non-compliance with COVID-19 prevention regulations. The Rwanda National Police says it's everyone's responsibility to comply with these prevention guidelines. Airport Inn motel has been closed for 90 days. This is because they released a traveler who had tested positive for COVID-19. Kaboyi Emmanuel from the hotel explains what happened. Was shown a list of hotels and she made the booking. The driver brought her here where she spent the night. The following morning, she showed a message of a negative result she had received before she boarded the plane in Kuwait, instead of the test she had done upon arrival. They discussed with the driver, who she gave money and took her home. The said person that was released was traveling from Kuwait. She proceeded to go to her home in Muhoza sector in Musanze district, where officials found her this Wednesday. She was taken to Kinihira Hospital in Rulindo district, while her husband was taken to an isolation center in Kinigi to first be tested as well. Police spokesperson CP John Bosco Kabera says they are now looking for the owner of the hotel and the driver that transported the lady. I'd like to say that the owner, together with the driver, are being looked for, and they should know that wherever they are, we are looking for them and we shall get them, and they will have to face justice. Kicukiro District Executive Administrator Mutesi Solange explains that this is not the first time Airport Inn motel has been caught in the act of violating COVID-19 safety regulations. Because of what they did, we've decided to shut them down for 90 days because it's not the first time they've violated COVID-19 regulations. There's a time they were arrested for operating as a bar. The hotel was among those allowed to accommodate passengers from abroad awaiting COVID-19 results. Among the regulations given by the Rwanda Biomedical Center to the hotels is to not let anyone out until they've received negative results from the COVID-19 tests. Now, staying on COVID-19 related issues, following the recent increase in the number of infections across the country, the government of Rwanda has established new health measures to mitigate the pandemic in regards to frequently visited hotels and restaurants. And to further understand this, Zephanie Niyonkuru, the Deputy CEO of the Rwanda Development Board, expands on this.
The guidelines are mainly related to frequently visited hotels and restaurants. And these guidelines will be effective from Friday, June 18th, 2021. And the guidelines are as follows. All staff in these selected hotels and restaurants and the clients visiting them will need to present a negative COVID-19 test. It can be either a PCR test or an antigen rapid test. That's number one. Number two, for the clients, the test validity is 7 days, and for staff, the validity is 14 days. And all of these testing have to be done at designated testing sites and private clinics, which were approved by Rwanda Biomedical Center, and all of these are published on the website of the Rwanda Biomedical Center. And also, where necessary, or if there need to be, accredited private clinics with partner hotels may also arrange for on-site testing. So in which case, an appropriate room shall be availed at the hotel for testing. Another important component is that only trained staff from those accredited clinics are the only ones who have rights to conduct this testing. And when they do this, they upload the results in the health management information system, and they also give a code which helps the clients to access the results. They can also do this through the RBC portal, They access the results, they either print or they keep a copy of the results on an electronic device. And whenever a client is visiting one of these establishments that we are going to say, they will have to present that negative certificates to our staff who will be at the entrance. The staff will scan, the QR code to make sure to check if it's authentic. And where they need be, the staff may also ask for an identification, ID, passport to the client coming in. So it really has to be clear that it's everyone coming to these establishments that we are starting with.
Okay.
And for these establishments, every 2 weeks we require them to submit a report showing the testing status of their staff. They'll be submitting these reports to the Rwanda Biomedical Center and to the Rwanda Development Board. And another major element, as you know, with the recent guidelines, a room, especially conference rooms, they can accommodate people up to the 30% of their capacity. So now we also request that they display the maximum number that particular room outlets can accommodate at that 30% capacity. What we can also add is that this list will be updated on bi-weekly basis. Every 2 weeks, Rwanda Development Board will be updating these lists. So new hotels, new restaurants will be added depending with how the situation of the pandemic will be evolving. And outdoor dining and events are really encouraged where feasible because scientifically it was proven that if you do these outdoor events and dining, the risk of the spread of the virus is kind of lower compared to indoor. So we encourage people where possible to have these events outdoor, but again, even when they do that, they have to still comply to the measures. Here we're talking about social distancing, we're talking about having the mask, among other guidelines that were developed by the government of Rwanda. So again, when it comes to implementation, the Ministry of Local Government, the Rwanda Development Board, Rwanda Biomedical Center, the Rwanda National Police, they be jointly working on enforcement to make sure that all of these measures are respected.
Okay, and on these measures, these particular measures that have been put in place, do they apply specifically to passengers that are quarantining in this hotel or anyone that's accessing this hotel?
Everyone coming to one of these hotels and restaurants. And if I may elaborate on those hotels and the restaurants that we are starting with, for hotels we are starting with 4-star hotels that are located in Kigali, namely Kigali Marriott Hotel, Radisson Blue Hotel and Kigali Convention Center, number 3, Kigali Serena Hotel, number 4, the Retreat Hotel, and for restaurants we are starting with 11 restaurants. Number 1 is Choose Kigali Restaurants, Meza Malonga Restaurants, Braketo Restaurants, Soy Restaurants, Nura Restaurants, Inha Steak House, The Heart Restaurants, Epicurier Restaurants, Pavenoir Restaurants, the Publica Lounge, Curry Kingdom Restaurants. Those are the 11 restaurants that we're starting with, and the 4 5-star that are located in Kigali. In
these particular hotels that you chose specifically, why did you choose the 5-star or high-end places, yet we know that very many Rwandans frequent what we will call the cheaper places?
As we mentioned, the list is not static. We'll be updating it. We're starting with these 4 5-star hotels and the restaurants that we've mentioned. And again, we keep monitoring. And even for the hotels and restaurants which are not on this list, the Rwanda Biomedical Center will be conducting random testing to monitor how the situation is. So even for the hotels that are not on this list, still they'll be subject to some random testing, which will also be informing the lists in terms of really either adding additional hotels or restaurant on this list that we are presenting today.
In other news, parents in Burera district have applauded the early childhood development centers, saying that their children's lives have changed for the better. In the northern province, however, 1,560 children suffer from malnutrition. 110 of these are below the red line, while 500 are in the yellow line, something citizens condemn and are calling for strong action from the parents. While celebrating the Day of the African Child held under the theme Isibo, a pivot to Child Development Minister of Gender and Family Promotion, Jeanette Baisenge, urged everyone to play their role in ensuring that children's development is paramount. Burera district has 426 ECD centers. Now today, Rwanda joins the rest of the world to celebrate the International Day of the African Child that is observed annually on June the 16th, and many students across Rwanda have displayed a variety of talents in relation to technology. There are concerns, however, that if these students are not properly mentored, their talents will go to waste. The Ministry of Education says there are plans to introduce the students to innovative centers across the country to help them develop their talents. Our very own Gabi Muvunyi has the details.
At St. Pierre School, these two S5 students, namely Theogene Niyijena and Samuel Ndaisenga, have been working on the construction of a motorcycle from scratch, using scrap metal, wires and other materials.
We started working on this as soon as we resumed school after the lockdown. But whilst at home, we were doing extensive research on the internet on how to go about it. We would always watch news on RTV and see that our country is really promoting innovation.
This motorcycle has the capability to travel approximately 4 kilometers and does not need fuel to operate.
It uses water and salt to operate. It charges itself as it goes. So this means that there is no need to charge it.
The students say they used the knowledge they acquired through subjects they learned in school that drove them to find the solution to air pollution caused by vehicle emissions. Also attending this school, Louise Marie Ishimwe and Eli Gisubizo built an automatic teller machine, also known as an ATM, that uses a mobile phone to withdraw money with a charge of 100 francs. Samuel Nibesha, a physics teacher, testifies that the students put into practice what they learned in class.
They have around 3 other projects they are working on. For my part, I advise them with all physics and chemistry related questions they may have, alongside the extensive research they continue to do on their own.
This is not the first time the students from St. Pierre School have demonstrated their talents. They recently made wine, soaps, and even named a satellite, Ikerechizo, that Rwanda recently launched into space. In Nyakabuye sector, another child named Emmanuel has demonstrated his great talents. He, on the other hand, built a radio with the ability to connect FM channels and, as well as a telephone, to call his family members without any costs or charges. The head of St. Pierre School says the school can only help the students to a certain level. He adds that these students can achieve more if they get the opportunity to proceed to higher levels.
Why these talents do not go beyond here is because we do not have enough advocacy on them so that they are exposed to more, not only here but on international scale. They also still have little access to adequate materials. Like you saw, they use scraps and metal use for doors to build that motorcycle. So the day they get the opportunity and their work has more exposure, we shall even be ahead of the British, given that they built a motorcycle that operates on water. So the day we are able to get some advocacy and it is well acknowledged, we'll be able to do bigger and better things.
The Ministry of Education says these children need to be identified, supported and empowered. The Minister of State for Primary and Secondary Education at the Ministry of Education says there are plans to connect these children with innovative centers.
n'icyorobaje cyo kubakurikirana aho ngaho haracyakeneye imbaraga nyinshi kugira ngo.
There needs to be more efforts put towards connecting these students with innovative centers across the country so that they can be able to learn and be mentored on their talents.
The African children in Rwanda, have limitless capabilities. They can discover and even solve different problems in the society. It is now the responsibility of various institutions to identify such talented children. Gabi Muvunyi for RTV.
Economic, agricultural and industrial experts agree with a report by the National Institute of Statistics about the significance of the role of these sectors in the 3.5% growth of the country's gross domestic product in the first quarter of 2021 compared to the same period last year. Sam Kalisa.
According to a report by the National Institute of Statistics, Rwanda's gross domestic product increased by 3.5% in the first quarter of 2021. The report shows food crops and cash crops production increased by 7%. The chairman of the task force at the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources, Nsengiyumva François, explains what led to this increase. We put in a lot of effort in between the private sector and the government for us to be able to achieve this increased productivity. The increase we see today is a result of hard work that was put in previously. Manufacturing activities grew by 8% due to 29% increase in the production of metal products, machinery and equipment, 20% in chemicals, rubber and plastic products, and 17% in wood and paper and printing. Some factory owners are in agreement with this report.
We
received many clients, more than those in 2019. We have realized about 40% increment in production. Before, it had come to a halt, but later picked up, for instance, in these last 3 months. Dr. Claude Rusibana, a senior researcher and senior lecturer, says the decision to make it easier for industrialists by reducing taxes has also contributed to their increased productivity. The goal was for the country's economy to grow by 5.1% in this year of 2021, and the fact that it has already grown by 3.5% gives confidence. The government has decided to waive taxes for raw materials needed by the country's industrial sector so that goods can be more affordable for the general public. This report shows that hotels and restaurants decreased by 34%, and in the services sector, information and telecommunication services grew by 18% and financial services by 10%. The report by the National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda shows that in the first quarter of 2021, GDP at current market prices was estimated at 2.5 billion Rwandan francs, up from 2.4 billion Rwandan francs in quarter 1 of 2020.
To judicial matters now, prosecutors have asked that Calixte Nsabimana be sentenced to 25 years in prison and for the fake ID papers and the passport he acquired in Lesotho be confiscated. As Sessionary reports on Thursday morning, prosecutors will respond to the testimonies given by other defendants in the group.
Prosecutors asked the court for the defendant to face the penalty, pointing out that he should in fact serve a life sentence for his crimes. But seeing that he did plead guilty, provide valuable information that aided investigators in the case, and that it was his first time facing any criminal charges, they instead asked that he be sentenced to 25 years behind bars. Survivors of the MRCD FLN attacks in the Nyungwe forest and surrounding areas that Paul Rusesabagina, Calixte Nsabimana and their co-accused are now answering for told the judges how the experience has affected their lives.
On the night of the 15th, at around 9 p.m. is when they called me to tell me that my husband had been shot and killed. It has been hard to accept that.
At the hospital, my wounds were treated and dressed, but doctors told me that my leg was so damaged I would never be able to use it to walk again.
ntago kuzongera kugenda.
Iyo ngize Imana nkabona umuntu nganiriza.
I cannot do anything such that it runs successfully, certainly not a business. When I am fortunate enough to find someone who will listen, I talk about it and it helps me. It's as if my thoughts are stuck in that forest because it was the first time I'd ever been in one and the first time I had watched a person die.
On Thursday morning, prosecutors will respond to the testimonies given by other defendants in the group, starting with Herman Sengimana, who replaced Calixte Nsabimana as the spokesperson of the MRCD-FLN coalition before he too was captured.
In other news, participants at the African Organization for Standardization General Assembly in Rwanda have stressed the need for modern equipment to measure the quality of goods in countries part of the African Union in order to support the objectives of the common market to facilitate the flow of goods to and from the continent. Jane Mutuni with the details.
The fact that some countries have not yet joined the African Organization for Standardization, yet they signed the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, while also lacking quality regulatory bodies, is one of the obstacles identified in the implementation of the agreement. The Secretary General at African Organization for Standardization, Dr. Herman Sengimana, and the Director General of the Rwanda Standards Board, Raymond Murenzi, say that these challenges could have a serious impact on the flow of goods across the continent.
Izo rero ni ingorane kubera ko ntabwo urebye amasezerano.
It's a challenge because the goal cannot be achieved unless those countries become members of the organization. We also did an evaluation in most of the African countries on the level of quality, and 48% of them, it's still very low as quality regulatory bodies are not as active. If we don't do something about it, it could affect the flow of goods due to some countries lacking equipment to measure the quality of their goods, hence not being accepted or acceptable in another country. The main challenge is that all quality regulations are yet to be agreed upon in order for goods to easily be moved or exported to other countries, because there are some countries that still have their own quality regulations. Hence, we need to share these same regulations to make it easier for investors, such that, for example, if an investor sets up a factory in Rwanda, his or her goods can be sold within the country as well as exported to other African countries. The president of the African Organization for Standardization, Buto Angon Charles, acknowledges that Africa's population of more than 1.2 billion people is a huge source of income, and therefore it requires the political will to set regulations for the quality of products produced on the continent. In other words, there is a principle of having modern equipment. It is essential for African countries to get to a level where the quality certificate issued in one country is acceptable in another country, but also based on another fact that the modern equipments for quality measurement in different countries should be functioning well. Morocco has currently joined the organization in addition to over 40 member countries.
Le Maroc est très satisfait et content.
Morocco is very proud to be a part of this organization, and our country prides in having great experience in quality, and through our quality center, we are ready to share that experience across the service sector.
Apporter tout son savoir-faire et partager son expertise dans tous les domaines d'activité.
So far, Africa has 1,200 quality regulations in place, yet more than 5,000 are needed to enable processed products in the value chain to be traded on the African market and to promote the Made in Africa program. Jane Mutoni, RTV News.
That's all we had for you tonight. Thank you for your company. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, free from COVID-19. Please wear your face mask diligently at all times and do all that is required of you to stop the spread of the pandemic. Otherwise, God bless you and keep you. And until next time, I'm Gloria Mutesi. Bye for now.